Hello, I'm Lawrence Anthony, and in this video I'm going to explain how to give an effective poster presentation. So the first thing I want to talk about is the difference between oral and poster presentations. Now, a traditional oral presentation is very different from a poster presentation. In an oral presentation, first we have to think about the audience, and it's very often very large and very distant from the presenter. So the presenter has to have big actions, use a loud voice, and project their message to that audience. In an oral presentation, the presenter is also trying to tell a story about their research and about their work to the audience, lead them on a journey to the final conclusion. When people organize an oral presentation, they tend to use a traditional format, beginning with the background, explaining the problem, then introducing the solution and evaluating that solution. And that follows the traditional research paper. We can also think of how to link slides together in an oral presentation. Because we are using PowerPoint, and because each slide is separate from the others, we need to think about the slide to slide and point to point transition phrases so that the audience can follow what we're doing. In addition, when we're delivering an oral presentation, we're usually using informal spoken English, certainly not a formal style as we would in writing, but also not a casual style that we would use it with our friends. And it's also very important to deliver the presentation in a dynamic way, using slides and using body language, using eye contact, looking at the audience, and using a strong voice. And if you don't deliver an oral presentation in this way, we can find that the audience becomes bored, they may fall asleep, and so on. Poster presentations then are quite different. If you think of a poster setting, the audience is much smaller, maybe 2 or 3 people in front of the poster. They're also much closer to you, perhaps standing right next to you by that poster. The purpose of an oral presentation is a poster presentation is quite different too. Unlike an oral presentation, here we're trying to introduce our research and answer questions about the research. So it's more like a Q&A. So if you think of how you would deal with a Q&A for an oral presentation, you could imagine a poster presentation being an extended Q&A. In terms of organization, a poster presentation is also going to be quite different from an oral presentation. Initially, a person may ask you what you're doing, and you have, say, 1 minute or 2 minutes to quickly explain the aim of your poster, the method that you used, the main results, and perhaps some future work. So the organization is quite different. The flow is also different. Rather than linking slides together, we have a basic Q&A format where the audience will ask a question and you give an answer, or you may ask the audience a question and they can answer. The style is quite different too. In a poster presentation, we can almost use a casual spoken style in the same way that we would use with friends. And the delivery is also different. The poster is, of course, the main way of delivering the information. So you need to be positioned away from the poster so that the audience can see that. You need to use body language in some sense, pointing at the relevant parts of the poster that the audience needs to look at. And again, eye contact and voice are important, but in this case, the eye contact should be to connect with the audience, that small group looking at you and talking to you. And your voice doesn't need to be projected now. We can speak at a regular volume so they can hear you. So this table summarizes the differences between oral and poster presentations in terms of audience, purpose, organization, flow, style, and delivery. And we can see from this table that they are very, very different. So To summarize the purpose of a poster presentation, we can see here that the purpose is to introduce who you are and what you do, to give a brief, standalone, attractive, illustrated summary of your research, and a visual aid to help you discuss your research with the audience. And the poster is also serves as a location for materials related to your research. So when people come to the poster, they can not only see the poster itself, but perhaps they can pick up a copy of the poster as an A4 sheet of paper. They may be able to pick up research papers that you've written in the past. And if you have a business card, they could also use, that can be a location for picking up your business cards and so on. So the purpose of an oral, poster presentation is quite different from that of an oral presentation. A poster can be considered to be designed to answer 5 simple questions. First, what is the research problem? So what are you doing? Second, why is the problem significant or important? Third, how did your research address the problem? Fourth, what findings did you get? And fifth, how will you develop the research in the future? So you should be designing the poster to answer these questions, making them clear. In terms of evaluation of a poster, so it's good to think, what are you trying to achieve from the poster? What do you hope to achieve? Perhaps you want to get some new ideas for research by speaking with the audience and discussing the research that you're doing. Perhaps you want to get some new research collaborators. So when you're introducing your poster, you're thinking, could you work with this person? Can they help you? Maybe you're hoping that the audience will be a funding agency, or maybe somebody that can give you an award, maybe the conference evaluation committee, maybe you want some fame from the poster. You should be thinking, what do I hope to achieve? So when you after you finish the poster, you can think about how to assess how well you achieve those goals. For example, you can ask yourself, how many people asked questions about your research? How many people came and looked at your poster and discussed it with you? You can also think about, did you form any new research partnerships after doing the poster? You can also think about, did the poster gain any attention? Did you get an award? Did you get questions? Did you get comments? Now, one of the common problems that students find is that even after creating a very beautiful looking poster, people don't come to see it. And so one of the things that is very important to do is finding the audience for your poster. It's important to remember that audience members have many posters to see at a conference. There could be 100 or 200 or 300 posters that they have to look at. So they're not going to go directly to see yours unless there's a special case that they actually know about your research before the conference and are aiming to come to see you directly. So you can think of audiences as 2 types. The first type is that they come to see your research. They found your abstract in the conference proceedings, or they heard of your name, or they knew you were coming, and they would come directly to your poster and ask you. This is a very rare type of audience. The most common type of audience are people that are wandering around the poster session looking for interesting research. They don't know what's there, and they will walk past your poster and hopefully they see something interesting and come and talk to you. So it's very important to establish some attention-grabbing strategies. So if people are walking past you in the poster session, you can think of saying a few things that would stop the audience and actually come towards you. So here are a few things that you could say to an audience member as they're walking past, not necessarily interested in what you're doing. So you could say, oh, hello, are you interested in my research? Hi, are you working in the area of bioscience? Hello, are you working in the same area as me? Hi, are you doing research with this tool as well? You might also say something like, hello, would you like me to explain our research? Hi, is there anything you'd like me to explain? Oh, hello, let me know if you have any questions. So just by basically starting up a conversation with an audience member walking past your poster, they're much more likely to stop, say hello back, and then perhaps look at the poster that you're giving and start asking you questions about it. Now, there are other ways that you can grab the attention of the audience and not necessarily talking about the type of audience member they are. You can simply talk about the conference itself. Now, this may sound strange, but you could just say, oh, it's so busy, isn't it? There are so many people here, aren't there? There are so many posters, aren't there? Have you seen anything interesting? So just by this almost small talk, you can get people interested in talking to you. You could even talk about the schedule and say, hi, did you see the plenary speech just now? What was it like? I think we need more breaks. I'm getting so tired. Or even the weather. It's a shame it's raining today, isn't it? Just by this small talk, again, the audience are much more likely to stop, listen to you, and perhaps start up a conversation. When you're going around the conference as well, it's important to promote your poster. So when you're at the coffee breaks or at the banquet in the evening, if you meet somebody and you're talking about the area of research that you're in, you can say, oh, if you're interested in bioscience, I'm giving a poster on the topic tomorrow in area X. Or, are you working on bioscience topics too? So am I. My poster is in area X. Or, are you giving a presentation or poster at the conference? So am I. I'll be in area X talking about, and so on. So these are 3 different ways to effectively stop the audience and have them come and listen to what you're doing in your poster session. Okay, so now let me talk about sequencing information in a poster. So this is the information that you would show in the poster, but not necessarily talk about. So a poster usually follows the following sequence. First, there is the title of the research, and then the author information, the first and last name, the affiliation, the contact information like an email, and so on. Next, you may have an abstract, especially if this is required by the conference committee. And then you would have an introduction or a background section with answers to the questions, what is the research problem? Why is the research problem significant? What is your hypothesis? And so on. Next, you'd probably have the method section, the basic design of your research. But here you don't want to be including all the minute details. Next, you would have a section describing the results, but only again the most important results. And here you'll be wanting to use figures and graphs and photographs and tables and so on to visualize the results, to illustrate your most important results. And for each figure, graph, photo, and so on, you need to add a short, clear label. And you want to be deleting all irrelevant information from the graphics, things like grid lines, keys, background colors, and so on, so that the audience can very easily see the main points. Then in the final part of the poster, you would have a conclusion section perhaps, or a future work section, which describes what you found, the differences with previous research, and the future directions that you're hoping to take. You may also have a section with references and perhaps acknowledgements and the funding source. So that's the general sequence of a poster presentation. If you go to a real conference, often the conference organizing committee will give quite specific details about laying out information in a poster. Here's an example of the 29th IFSCC Congress, and they provide all kinds of information about papers and poster layouts and so on. We can see here Handwritten posters are not accepted. Text must be easily read at 1.5 meters distance. All posters must be written entirely in English, and so on. We also have dimensions of the poster, which you should be following. So just to summarize, if you're going to design a poster, this is the general layout. So the title at the top, author name, affiliation, contact information, introduction, methods, results, conclusions, references, acknowledgements, and so on. You'll also notice that the general direction is top down and then left to right. So this is perhaps the most common design that you'll see. So here are some principles of good poster design. Design the poster to be read top down and left to right. Also number the sections of the poster to add clarity. So section 1, section 2, section 3. So 1, introduction, 2, methods, 3, results, and so on. When you're writing text in the poster, it's good to first design the poster to be read completely in about 5 to 10 minutes, which means about 500 words. But actually 150 words to 350 words is better. And you can think of these percentages. So 20% text, 40% graphics, and 40% white space. You should try to use 2 to 3 font sizes, but no more. Also, you should be using a sans serif font for the titles and headings, a sans serif font or perhaps a serif font for the main text, and you should be using bold or color for emphasis and not italics and underlines. And also try to avoid using all caps. So basically the design of the poster should be quite similar to a regular oral presentation. Another point is to use left justified text with jagged right edges to improve readability. So this is kind of similar to how a newspaper is designed. In terms of colors, we can think of using dark text on light backgrounds and use 2 to 3 soft colors for emphasis, things like reds or oranges, blues, and so on. And if color is important, do check the color rendering under fluorescent light conditions, because often a conference setting will change the way that it appears. And finally, in terms of language, you want to be using lists and bullet points instead of whole paragraphs of text. You should be avoiding text blocks of over 10 lines long. Basically, you think of using text blocks which are less than 100 words. You should be trying to use active tense as much as possible. You should be avoiding filler phrases like in conclusion, to summarize, and so on. And especially things like see figure 1 for details, as shown in figure 2, because these are quite visible to the audience, so that you don't need to state that. You also need to check the grammar and spelling in the poster before printing it out on cloth or as an A1 or A0 size. So a good way to design the poster is to start with an A4 piece of paper, design it on A4, check it for grammar and spelling, for colors and so on, and then print it in its full size. A couple more points about design. You should really try to avoid figures that look like this, where we have the gray background, we have grid lines and so on. Try to design the poster to look more like this, so that we have nice white backgrounds, the noise is gone. So you can see here a much cleaner, more pretty design. Some people would even say you could go to this extent where the figure is very, very simple, but I would perhaps think that this is a little bit too simple for the design that you want to be using. So here's an example poster that reflects some of these guiding principles. We can see a nice clear title at the top. We've got the name and the affiliation, an introduction, an objective here, followed by methods, results, conclusions, and acknowledgements. You'll notice that the font here is a serif font, not a sans serif font, and perhaps there's a little bit too much white space between the 3 columns. I'd perhaps prefer to use a sans serif font and maybe a little bit of a bigger font so that the text is more easy to see. But in general, it's a nice design. Let's talk now about delivering a poster presentation. So the first thing you need to do is to give the audience space and time to take in the presentation. So do not immediately try to explain it to them. Let them look at the poster, let them think about what the ideas are, what the results are, what the conclusions are, before you start talking. Now, when you do start introducing the poster, do not stand in front of the poster while waiting, presenting, or answering questions. Always stand at the side, make sure that the audience can all see the poster. It's also maybe useful to bring a pointer and use that when necessary, or where necessary, so that you can point from slightly further away, rather than using your hand to point or actually standing in front of the poster. Another thing to note is to use a semi-casual style when talking with the audience, basically a friendly, informal style, almost with the same way that you would talk with perhaps colleagues in your lab. You also need to be prepared to answer sudden, direct questions about your research. Somebody may say, "So what method are you using?" Or "What results did you get?" And be able to answer those kinds of questions. Don't be expecting audience members to ask you to explain the whole presentation from the beginning to the end. They may just come and say, "Oh, what does that mean? Why did you do this?" and so on. However, it's also useful to create a 1-minute presentation giving an overview of all the points in the poster. So think of how could you explain if somebody was busy and they were rushing past and they wanted to get a quick summary of what you're doing, in 1 minute, what would you say? There are some other cases where it might be useful to create a 3-minute summary of the main points of the poster too. So here's an example of a 1-minute overview of a poster. I'll read it out so you can get an idea of the timing. Okay, so we've been looking at the impact of abnormal skin formation on chronological aging. As you probably know, lots of people have been looking at the connection between skin and aging, but the mechanisms are not well understood. So we investigated the properties of skin from a single donor at ages 30 to 60 years old. Here are the results of the lifespan, the mRNA expression, and the production of molecular chaperones. You can see that we found a clear relationship between aging and abnormal skin formation. We then investigated the effect of genetic modifications on skin elasticity. You can see here that this knockdown has a dramatic effect. So we're now working to see how we can control the effects more precisely. So do you have any questions? So this is a very simple example, and you will notice that there's a very informal style of speaking going on here, with the but and the so and the you and the we and so on. So this may be an example of how you would give a 1-minute overview, not reading out the title, not necessarily saying your name and your affiliation, but just getting to the main points. Let's think now what kinds of questions you're likely to be asked. Because you are from Japan, or maybe working or researching in Japan, it's likely that you're going to get questions about Japan or Waseda University, and perhaps even questions about yourself. So be prepared to answer questions like, "Have you come all the way from Japan?" And here, don't just say yes, but say, "Yes, I've come from Japan. I work at Waseda University in Tokyo." You may get questions like, "So what's it like in Japan?" And here you could easily talk about the weather, the food, the research environment, and so on. What department are you in? Are your colleagues here too? Try to answer these questions, but also link back to the research that you're doing. So if they ask you, "Are your colleagues here too?" you could say yes and explain what research they're doing. You may also get questions about the research, and hopefully that would be the main question that you get asked about. So they could say, "Hello, can you explain what you've been doing?" And here is your chance to give your 1-minute summary. So what's your main finding? Here you can jump straight to the results section of the poster and explain what you found. Somebody could ask, have you been collecting these donor samples for the past 30 years? And then this is a chance for you to explain a little bit more of the methodology. Somebody may say, you said that the number decreased. Where does it show that? And here's a chance for you to just point at the poster and perhaps a figure or a table that explains that information, and then you can expand on this. Somebody may just come up and say, can you explain this figure? So instead of giving that 1-minute summary or the 3-minute summary, you can immediately just quickly explain what the figure shows and how it relates to the aim of the research. And one more question here is, so what do you think the mechanism for aging is? This may be a question that goes beyond the poster, and here's your opportunity to just give your feelings or your thoughts about the topic, and perhaps you could even ask them what they think the mechanism for aging is. So, in short, you should be prepared to answer questions about Japan, Waseda University, your research career, and also about the research that you're showing in the poster. But remember that a poster session is really a Q&A between you and the audience members. It's a chance to talk about research. It's a chance to talk about not only your research, but also the audience's research, to connect, to make research friends, to make research collaborators, and to promote your research in the wider community. So if you're interested in knowing more about posters, here are some links which you can also find in the slides that are together with this video. So that's how to give a poster presentation. Thank you.